And it's these rain events that we've had here over the last couple weeks that are most concerning to me. Hi, my name's Jake Fossenkemper, Director of Agronomy and Research here at Liqui-Grow.
Hi, I'm Katie Hess, Director of Sales and Marketing here at Liqui-Grow. Dr. Jake, I did not realize that I didn't throw in my rubber boots today, so I'm sacrificing the red shoes for you to do this video out here in this muddy farm.
Wonderful organic matter's turning those red shoes black.
Yes, yes. So that's kind of been the theme lately here in eastern Iowa. We've just had a ton of rain. And what's that doing to the crop, Dr. Jake?
Yeah, Katie, there's several things that we need to be thinking about right now. So on a conference call this morning, we just talked about all the rainfall and the cooler than normal temperatures. Are the right conditions to get tar spot going and other foliar diseases in corn. So all this precipitation we've had over the last couple of weeks is definitely splashing that inoculum up on the lower canopy, and it's providing the environmental conditions to get foliar diseases going. So that's something you need to be thinking about. It's been an interesting weather year. You know, it'd be hard to understand in your head if we're above normal precipitation or below. But when you think back about the year, kind of the very end of March, that first half of April, we were pretty wet. And, you know, we all said, well, the soils are full, you know, we're in a good place. Then we got pretty dry and we're worried about being on the drought monitor. And all of a sudden, for the last couple of weeks, it won't quit raining.
Sure.
And so when you start to look at just how much rain we've had this spring, generally speaking, we're now running 4 to 6 inches above normal. I have a precipitation map for, this is specific to eastern Iowa and northwest Illinois. But if you look at that precipitation map, we are running above normal at this point. And so the question might be, well, how much rain do we need to get before we really start worrying about in-loss? And so there was some work done in northern Illinois in the kind of mid-2000s. We're going to have this figure in the presentation here, and that work showed that once you get above 10, 12 inches of total spring precipitation, nitrogen loss really takes off, okay? And it's these rain events that we've had here over the last couple of weeks that are most concerning to me, because when the soil gets warm, 65 to 75 degrees or so, which it definitely is right now, you can lose 4 to 5% of your nitrogen per day due to denitrification. So that's the gaseous loss of N when the soil is saturated and has no oxygen in it. That is a big factor when it comes to N loss, okay? So we've had that over the last couple weeks.
So as the soils warm up, though, you often see some mineralization, and nitrogen is actually being mineralized at the same time. Yep. So are you able to keep up with the loss that it's mineralizing as well? No.
We do have beautiful high organic matter soils, frankly some of the best in the world. We're blessed. They do provide a lot of nitrogen, free of course, but that mineralizable N and the fertilizer N is all susceptible to loss. Okay, so yes, absolutely. Is the soil going to mineralize in when it dries out? Yes, but there's no way that it can provide enough to meet the entire needs of the crop. Sometimes that happens, but it's not very often that happens, okay?
Should we be thinking about doing some late season nitrogen applications then?
You definitely should be thinking about that. I would look at some maps, or maybe you have a rain gauge in your farm, and really think about how much rain have we had since about, you know, the beginning of April. You know, if you've had more than 15 inches total, you're definitely in a place where you've lost some nitrogen, and you definitely should be considering going back and doing a supplemental application. Of course, you need to think about factors like, was all my nitrogen applied in the fall as anhydrous? Was it all applied very early in the spring as anhydrous or UAN, frankly? Did I use a stabilizer like Instinct? Those things can make a difference, right? We know they can make a difference. So you really need to think about how much rain have you had, have an intimate conversation with your agronomy and field advisor. You could take PSNT pre-side dress nitrogen test. You need to go ahead and do that pretty quickly, but that would be another thing that would help you understand how much N is left in the soil. But I'm a big fan of side dressing.
Oh, sure, side dressing.
A planned side dress application, and that's for years like this one. Does side dressing pay every year? Absolutely, it doesn't pay every year. But in years like this, it absolutely does. In fact, I was with a farmer this morning. He put on 60 pounds of N with his planter. He doesn't have to worry about nitrogen loss because he's planning on making a routine application.
Sure.
And he's going to be in great shape because most of his nitrogen is still in the tank at our facility and it can't be lost.
Okay, great. So what about, we talked a little bit about disease. Is there anything else you'd like to touch on with disease with all this wet weather we're having?
There's been a lot of questions about the yellow soybeans, the standing water in soybeans. You know, how much yield are we losing in soybeans? Drainage is extremely important, right? You know, and the factors you think about in Iowa that reduce yield, it's too much water and not enough, right? And clearly, too much water can reduce the yield of crops. Again, I think a lot of it's, not all of it, but a good chunk of it's about nitrogen and corn. When it comes to soybeans, thankfully at this point in time, there's not a lot of soybeans that are further along than R1, R2. And thankfully in soybean, we can really buffer a lot of stress early in soybean. So I just don't think most of the soybeans are at a place in their development where we have to be too worried about saturated soils right now. If we continue to get rain over the next few weeks like this, yes, then we do need to be worried, because once you get to about R3, they really start determining yield, okay? So I think we're okay on soybeans right now, generally speaking, but let's hope it quits raining a little bit anyway.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to talk about today, Dr. Jake?
I think that's probably enough.
Well, clearly there's a lot of water. You can hear all the frogs chirping in the background. Hopefully you can hear that too. So hope that it's drying out around where you're at, having a great summer and getting ready for the 4th of July.
Stay in the know with Liqui-Grow.